Before Gideon ever swung a sword, he questioned if God had forgotten him. Before he led an army, he was hiding from his enemies in a winepress. And before he ever became a judge, he was just a man trying to survive. Gideon wasn't bold. He wasn't a leader. In fact, he was unsure, afraid, and felt like the least qualified person in his entire family. But that's exactly who God chose. Why? Because God doesn't choose based on appearance, strength, or confidence. He chooses based on obedience and faith, even when it's small. The Israelites had once again turned away from God. The book of Judges opens cycle after cycle with this haunting phrase: the Israelites did evil in the eyes of the Lord. As a result, they were handed over to the Midianites, ruthless oppressors who destroyed their crops, raided their livestock, and left them starving in caves and mountains with strongholds. But even in their rebellion, God had not forgotten them. He raised up a deliverer, not from a palace, not from the strongest tribe, but from the weakest clan, and the least of that clan, Gideon. Hidden gold. God sees what others overlook. You may feel small, unqualified, overlooked, even afraid. But when God calls you, He already sees the warrior in you. You may only see the wine press, but He sees the battlefield. You may only feel fear, but He sees the victory already won. And here's the gold. God isn't looking for the strongest voice in the room. He's looking for the one who will say yes. Even when it's shaky, even when it comes with questions, even when the yes sounds more like, "Are you sure you mean me?" God wants your yes. Then and now, God called Gideon while he was hiding, not leading. He called him mighty warrior before he ever stepped into battle. Now, God is still calling you by your destiny, not your current situation. He speaks to your identity before your circumstances ever change. And just like Gideon, He may ask you to fight with less resources, less support, fewer people, so that when you win, no one can say it was because of you. It will be clear the glory belongs to God, not just so you know, but so your friends, your family, and even your enemies will know the Lord your God is with you. Israel was in a crisis for 7 years. The Midianites had ravaged the land, destroying crops, stealing livestock, and forcing God's people to hide in caves. It was humiliating, desperate, hopeless. And right in the middle of that chaos, we find a man named Gideon, not leading, not fighting, but threshing wheat in a wine press. That alone tells you everything. You don't thresh wheat in a wine press. That's a job done out in the open where the wind can carry away the chaff. But Gideon was hiding His actions were driven by fear. He was trying to survive, not be seen. But God saw him. And not only did God see him, he called him. An angel of the Lord appeared and said, "The Lord is with you, mighty warrior." Judges chapter 6, verse 12. Mighty warrior? Gideon didn't feel mighty. He didn't even feel brave. And like many of us, his first response was doubt. If the Lord is with us, why has all of this happened? It wasn't just fear talking. It was years of disappointment, a heart full of questions, a man who had heard of the miracles of the past, but saw none of it in the present. But God didn't rebuke his doubt. He responded with purpose. Go in the strength you have. Am I not sending you? Gideon protested again, saying his family was the weakest in the tribe and that he was the least in his father's household. But God reminded him, I will be with you. Still unsure, Gideon asked for a sign. He prepared a meal, meat and bread, and set it before the angel. The angel touched the offering with the tip of his staff, and fire flared from the rock, consuming it. And just like that, the angel disappeared. This terrified Gideon. He realized he had seen the angel of the Lord face to face. But God reassured him once more, peace, do not be afraid. You are not going to die. Gideon built an altar there and called it, "The Lord is Peace." Gideon was hiding in a wine press, not because he was weak, but because life had worn him down. He was doing what needed to be done, just in the wrong place in the wrong posture, because of fear. And maybe that's you too. Maybe you're working a job that drains your soul because you're afraid to step out. Maybe you're stuck in a living situation that's weighing heavy, but you don't know where to go next. Maybe you're battling illness or grief, and even though you're functioning, it's behind closed doors because it's safer there. Maybe you've been hurt so many times that hiding has started to feel like home. But even in the hiding, God calls you by your purpose, not your pain. He didn't say, "Why are you hiding?" He said, "The Lord is with you, mighty warrior." And the truth is, God sends us signs all the time that He's near. Sometimes it's dramatic, but often it's small, personal, and easy to overlook. It's the accident you narrowly missed, the stranger who said exactly what you needed to hear, the unexpected check that showed up when you were down to nothing, the friend who called just in time, the peace that came when everything around you was chaos. These are all God's way of whispering, I see you, I haven't left you, I'm still writing your story. You don't need to come out of hiding perfect. You just need to come out willing, because God will meet you right where you are, call you what you can't see in yourself, and walk with you until it becomes real. The same man who once threshed wheat in hiding is now preparing for battle, but not with the strength of thousands. God, had a different plan. Gideon starts with 32,000 men, but God says, that's too many. If they win this army, they'll say they did it. So he tells Gideon to send home everyone who's afraid. That leaves 10,000. Still too many. So God says, watch how they drink water. And through this unusual test, only 300 men remain. Just 300. Armed with trumpets, jars, and torches, not swords. And here's the miracle. They didn't have to fight. They simply obeyed. When they broke their jars, blew their trumpet, and lifted their torches, the enemy camp turned on itself in confusion. The Midianites destroyed each other. Then and now, God is still reducing our armies, still stripping things down so when victory comes, there's no doubt who brought it. That job you lost, that opportunity that didn't come through, that friendship that faded, maybe it wasn't the enemy. It was God reducing your army because he saw what you couldn't. Your trust was shifting from him to numbers, to status, to strength. God doesn't need numbers. He needs surrender. Gideon went into battle outnumbered, but overwhelmed the enemy through obedience, not might. And the same is true for you. God might be calling you into something with less than what you thought you needed because he wants you to remember who actually brings the victory. Hidden goal. We always think the next win will come from more time, more resources, more people on our side. But God often works through subtraction before he multiplies your impact. You may have fewer friends, but greater peace. You may have fewer followers, but deeper purpose. You may have fewer opportunities, but more obedience. You may have less money, but more joy. God is not trying to humiliate you by removing the extra. He's preparing to reveal his glory. After Gideon's miraculous victory over Midian, the people of Israel say, rule over us, you, your son, and your grandson, because you have saved us out of the hand of Midian. Judges chapter 8, verse 22. But Gideon replies, I will not rule over you, nor will my son rule over you. The Lord will rule over you. Judges chapter 8, verse 23. It sounded spiritual, humble, like Gideon was giving glory to God. But his actions tell a more complicated story because immediately after he says, I do have one request, that each one of you give me an earring from your share of the plunder. Judges chapter 8, verse 24. The people agree and give him over 40 pounds of gold. Gideon then melts it down and makes an ephod, a priestly garment, but not to be worn. He places it in his hometown like a monument. And the result, All Israel prostituted themselves by worshiping it there, and it became a snare to Gideon and his family. Judges chapter 8, verse 27. What led to this moment? Let's talk about what's really going on under the surface. He was exhausted and discouraged. Exhausted yet pursuing. The Bible says, Judges chapter 8, verse 4. That's a dangerous place to be spiritually. When you're still moving, but you're not grounded. He had just been mocked and betrayed. The men of Succoth and Peniel rejected his request for help. Judges chapter 8, verse 5 through 9. Even after risking his life for them, his own people didn't support him. He had deep wounds, even in victory. Victory doesn't always heal what the battle exposed. And those wounds can turn into pride, insecurity, or a need to prove something. He didn't ask God about the ephod. He didn't build an altar. He didn't return to prayer. He built something that looked holy, but was never commanded. This happens today, even in ministry. Let's be real. We've seen this happen again and again, even with pastors, leaders, influencers, and preachers who started with deep passion and good intentions. It begins with a real encounter with God. They say it's all for God, and it is at first. But over time, they get tired. They get hurt by the people they were trying to help. They stop seeking God for the next steps and start relying on what worked last time. They build platforms, images, movements, but forget the presence that started it all. Like Gideon, they say, I don't want the title, but they still take the power. They reject the crown, but collect the gold. And what starts as ministry becomes a monument, a golden ephod that looks spiritual, but no longer points to God. Gideon didn't intend to lead Israel into idolatry, but that's what happened. And today, you don't have to be a preacher for this to apply. We all do it in subtle ways. The job God gave you becomes the thing you worship. The platform He opened becomes a stage you protect more than His presence. The marriage He healed becomes something you now idolize more than the one who restored it. Then and now, the real test of your heart isn't just in battle. It's in the blessing that comes after. Will you still seek Him? Will you still give Him glory? Or will you start building something to remember what you did? Gideon's ephod reminds us you can win the war and still lose the worship. Hidden gold. And let's talk about what the ephod or hiding place might look like today. For Gideon, he went from hiding in fear to building in pride. And for us, it can be a job you hate that you're too afraid to leave, a relationship that no longer honors God but feels safer than starting over, a diagnosis or illness that has paralyzed your belief in healing, a living situation you settled into because you're afraid to believe for more. Sometimes the wine press we hide in becomes the place we justify staying in. And we call it wisdom or humility, but really it's fear. And yet God sends us signs just like he did for Gideon. Maybe not fire from a rock, but a car accident that didn't happen. A bill that somehow got paid. A random phone call that gave you just enough hope to keep going. A devotional or verse that keeps showing up in your feed. He's saying, I see you, I chose you, but don't build an idol in the place you should have built an altar. So, the battle is over. The torches are out. The trumpets are quiet. The 300 stand in awe because the battle truly was the Lord's. But that's not where Gideon's story ends. Sometimes the most dangerous test isn't the fight, it's what comes after the fight. It's not always the failures that destroy us. Sometimes it's the wins, the applause, the admiration, the fame, the moment when everyone starts looking at you instead of God and you don't correct them anymore. Gideon said the right thing, but somehow in his heart, he wanted a reminder of the glory. He wanted to hold on to a piece of the moment. So he made something beautiful that turned into bondage. We've seen it in pastors and leaders and people who started out anointed, but slowly shifted into ego. Not overnight, but in small, golden, glittering compromises. And if we're honest, we've seen it in ourselves. Hidden gold. Sometimes the enemy won't come to destroy you. He'll come to celebrate you because the applause can be a trap just as much as the attack. So here's the warning. After the victory, stay low. Stay close to the God who gave you the win in the first place. Don't let the compliments crown you because Gideon won the battle, but he lost the aftermath. And the very people he delivered will go right back into the sin after he died. Mistakes Gideon made and what they mean for us. Gideon was a man chosen by God, visited by an angel, filled with the Spirit and still very human. His story reminds us that God can use broken people, but it also shows us what happens when we don't deal with the cracks beneath the calling. Number 1, fear was a root he never dug up. Gideon was hiding in fear when God called him. And though he said yes, that fear never fully left. He needed multiple signs, repeated reassurance, and even after seeing miracles, he often defaulted to worry. He didn't just struggle with fear, he let fear be his filter. Are you trusting God or just stalling until you get enough signs to feel safe? Number 2, he tore down one altar but left another standing in his heart. Yes, Gideon tore down the altar of Baal in the middle of the night. That was bold, especially since it was his own father's altar. But later, he built another altar, one that looked religious but became idolatrous, the ephod. That ephod wasn't evil on the surface. It was made from gold. People willingly gave. But sometimes what people give us in honor can quietly pull us away from God if we don't steward it right. Every leader is tempted to build monuments instead of memorials. One glorifies God, the other keeps attention on us. Number 3, he let pride creep in after victory. After the Midianite victory, Gideon started slipping. He took the royal jury and symbols of kingship, asked for the gold from the people, made decisions with no record of prayer, eventually refused to be king in words, but acted like one in behavior. He even told his son to kill 2 kings, and when the boy wouldn't do it, he did it himself and took their royal ornaments. Pride doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it dresses in spiritual clothes and calls itself confidence or closure. Number 4, he didn't finish strong. After all the victories, after all the miracles, after God's Spirit had come on him, Gideon quietly slipped into comfort. He took many wives, Judges chapter 8, verses 30. He fathered 70 sons. He stopped seeking God. He created something that led Israel into spiritual adultery. And worst of all, the Israelites did not remember the Lord their God who had rescued them, nor did they show any loyalty to the family of Gideon. Judges chapter 8, verse 34 through 35. They forgot God. They forgot him. They forgot what was done because it wasn't built on lasting faith. If your leadership doesn't lead people back to God, it will lead them back to bondage. Number 5, he confused applause with affirmation. The people loved him after the battle, and Gideon seemed to love their praise. Even while pretending to deflect it, he said the right things. The Lord will rule over you. But then he made the ephod. He lived like he still needed their approval. Applause can feel like God's affirmation, but if we're not careful, it becomes a counterfeit voice louder than his. What we learn from Gideon's mistakes. You can be anointed and still insecure. You can win in public and still be bound in private. You can destroy one idol and secretly build another. And yet, God still used him. God still gave victory. But the real test wasn't the war. It was what came after. Gideon's story shows us that you can win a battle and still lose sight of the God who gave you the strength. You can tear down altars and still leave up idols in your heart. You can build a reputation and still have no legacy. And yet, God still used him powerfully, miraculously, on purpose. So, what we learn from Gideon: your hiding doesn't cancel your calling. Your fear doesn't stop God from speaking. Your victories aren't the end, your heart is. Your legacy is built in the private decisions after the public wins. Gideon's fall wasn't sudden, it was quiet, and that's what makes it dangerous. Fear that's never confronted, signs that replace surrender, success that breeds comfort, influence that slides into idolatry, honor that becomes a trap, a generation that forgets. Let's not repeat it. In closing, I want you to know you are not forgotten. You are not overlooked. And even if you feel unqualified, you're still chosen. Let Gideon's life stir your heart to go deeper with God, not just to win battles, but to build a legacy that leads others to Him long after you're gone.